you want, and then it'll be there at the end. So yeah, thank you everybody for joining me. I'm really looking forward to this one. Just I suppose a bit of insight. So obviously for those of you who know me and those who don't, I've been a recruiter of architects for I think since the Millennium Bug. So it's been a long time now. I hopefully I know how EAs think and what they sort of do. In the last sort of 6 months, I personally have seen quite an uptick in architecture, and I think the demands of it, particularly where AI is going. Architecture is at the moment predicted to be about $1.3 billion worth a year in terms of EA market. By the end of the decade, they reckon it's going to go up to about 2.5 billion. So quite a move within the EA. I think particularly with AI coming in and a lot of transformation, a lot of integration, I think we see in the EA space is really going to flourish. Which sort of brings me on to Declan. So I met Declan at an event last year. We really got to know each other in the pub afterwards, so it's good for any good Irish guy to really sort of put all the worlds to right. And I really enjoyed what Declan was saying. In architecture, we do a lot of very technical things. We really think a lot around what the technology is and what the space is. And one of the things that I really liked about the way that Declan sort of does stuff is it's about the art of storytelling. And we've had quite a few conversations leading up to this meeting, and Declan runs a podcast series which I've been going through. I've really resonated with a lot of things that Eddie's saying. Is we're missing a lot of those old skills on how to tell a story, how to really define what we mean. And I think with Declan's podcast, there's probably a lot more to that, and he will explain as we go through. But I'll give you a brief sort of insight into where he is. But the main thing is, how do we tell a better story? And I think that's what we all need to look at as architects. So Declan is a highly experienced technology and leadership consultant, coach and mentor, 25 plus years experience of international experience across a range of industries, including finance, resource, education, local council, utilities, and consulting. His areas of expertise include digital strategy development, enterprise architecture, governance, and leadership capability. Declan provides a range of professional services to his clients with a focus of business-led technology, innovation, digital transformation. He's passionate about all things digital and avid technology enthusiast. He's a speaker and podcaster. He's founder and the host of Digital Mythology Podcast, helping digital leaders and professionals enhance their digital transformation success using the power of storytelling. So I think without further ado, Declan, I'll sort of move on to you. And what we do is, if you want to put any questions in the chat, we'll answer those at the end. But we should probably take us about an hour to complete the whole thing. Speak to you also after you, Declan.
Great. Well, thanks for that introduction, Andrew. I wasn't any of those things in the pub when we had our pints after the session we did. So yeah, look, what a lovely introduction. And the more I hear it, the more I start to believe it, which is a worry. So my name's Declan Goodman. Yeah, as per Andrew's point, I've been around tech for a long time, and you can probably tell by my accent that I have an Irish accent coach as well. So a bit about me: I grew up in Ireland, got educated there, came out to Australia 25 years ago, and lived here for about 20 years. So I'm right in between Australian/Irish, but my accent stayed with me. It's a bit of a myth in there, I guess. And look, today, really grateful to be able to present today to you some of my, I guess it's started as a passion project about 7-8 years ago, because I've worked in technology, digital transformation, enterprise architecture. I used to write code years ago, and before AI was about to write better code. And I kind of realized halfway through my career that we have plenty of frameworks and tools and methodologies, but what the gap in IT in general, I think, is the storytelling, or at least building that relationship with our non-technical stakeholders. And as per Andrew's point, this industry is growing remarkably. And now with AI coming into the picture, I think it's more important for us to lead change with human connectedness, with the story behind it, because AI is going to do a huge amount of what we do. Let's face it, in 5 to 8 years' time. So what are we going to do? And I think it's the difference between the craft which is how to write code, and the art, which is how to make sure the code you write or the solutions you architect or the systems you build meet the human-led requirement. Just a quick check. Is my voice okay? Can you hear me okay? Just wondering if the volume's all right, because sometimes people are nodding and I'm not sure if they can hear me. Thank you. Thank you again. Look, I've met a very small bunch of you. I was giving a talk with Andrew and Mega. It was a partnership in Sydney not long ago. And before that, I was at the Gartner Symposium, where I gave a talk on the Mega stand. So Mega, as you know, is a tool. They do an enterprise architecture tool set, but I've done some consulting at the same clients they did. And when they heard me talking about storytelling, they just asked me to present at their Gartner conference, and it was a really well-received talk. So that kind of led me to really validate answering the call, really. You know, for me, it's about making enterprise architecture and strategy more human-based and get out of the systems for a while and the frameworks and the tech and put ourselves in the hearts and minds of our non-technical stakeholders, because they're the ones with the, not just with the sponsorship and the money, but they're the ones who need the solutions. We're often there to build them. So I have some slides to present. I'll have a go at doing them now. I'm not terribly used to using this interface, but let me try and have a go. So if you bear with me, please. And then we'll talk through it, probably be about 20 minutes or so. It's an open enough session, so if you really want to raise your hand and jump in, please feel free to do so, or we can have we may just have, in fact, we have planned a Q&A session at the end, so you won't see that in the agenda, but since then, Andrew and I had a wee chat, and we figured let's have a Q&A at the end. So let me find the right screen to share. Just one moment. This looks about right. Now, let me see which one you're looking at. Apologies. You should see. Is that full screen now?
No, that's the presenter's view.
Oh, it's done it again. Sorry, guys, just stay with me. Every time I go to try to, how do I do that? Stop presenting in a moment. See how else I can share it. Apologies, I might just share my whole screen, so just a moment. Thanks for your patience. This always happens in real time, live. You try to prepare as much as you can. While I'm doing that, what I might do is just tell you a wee bit of a story myself. So, and this is part of the normal presentation talk I give, is when I was young, I was growing up in Ireland, and I was a wee teenager, and my brother used to work as a fitter turner. Now, he used to go and work on the boats up in a place called Donegal. I don't know if you've been to Ireland, but there's a West of Ireland fisher village area called Donegal, and it's pretty special. And he used to work there as a fitter turner, and he'd come home at the weekends and he'd talk about the dinner table, about all the things they're doing on the boats, like putting in new, I don't know, pneumatic systems, putting in safety nets, radars. Back then, no, that wasn't a great amount of tech, but there was still emerging tech. And he used to talk about the backup systems and the freezer systems and all that stuff the fishermen needed, because they'd go out to sea for 3 to 4 weeks, if not longer. And there was a lot of dependency on things working. So what used to strike me, though, is it didn't really matter to me what type of technology or what type of pumps or pneumatic systems he spoke of. What mattered to me was the story behind it, right? So he was a fitter turner, designing and putting in systems to keep fishermen safe, or to keep the fishermen in sync with what's happening under the water using radars. He was building in systems of redundancy so that if the engine fails, you don't want to be out in the North Atlantic Sea in winter for too long without heater. So what stuck with me wasn't so much about the technology, didn't really matter to me. What mattered to me was the purpose and the value it added. And that's what I want to bring back to digital. So when we often try to talk to non-business stakeholders, I want them to sit around the table with me, and I want to tell a story like my brother did, where they don't have to worry about if it's SAP, Microsoft, Azure, if it's this or that, because it doesn't really matter. The way tech is moving these days, you could pick from the top 3 or 4 Gartner quadrant product. It's not going to make it or break it. What's going to make it or break it is the people side. So I love 2 things, digital and mythology. And mythology is it's not really about fairy tales. It's about stories around human transformation. And digital transformation is no different. It's about people, not systems. And they both share something in common, which is dragons. And the dragons we all face as architects, we know them, and they're going to come in the slides a bit moment later, if I ever get to share them, is the dragons of, miscommunication, the dragons of we don't understand the value of EA, or why do we need an architecture roadmap? Can't we just get on with our business strategy, etc.? So I joined this ancient mythological storytelling knowledge I have and passion with modern digital leadership. I brought them together in something called digital mythology. And the tagline is where myth meets modern mastery. It's really lovely. I've enjoyed it. It's sort of something I've worked on for over 6-7 years. And now I'm finally able to start sharing it. So it's a message that needs to be heard. I think a lot of architects like yourselves and digital leaders feel disenchanted, disconnected, to be honest. I can't blame half of the people I've met for wanting to change career. We've all been there, right? Enterprise architects, what value do they add? Could we just get solution architects instead? Can we get the vendor to do the work? Why do we need to have governance, etc.? It's not an easy job trying to be an enterprise architect. And especially when you have a system that's geared around system talk, and we've only been talking the narrative of systems instead of storytelling. So I'm going to try again to share the slides. So thank you for listening to that. That just sets the scene. If I can't share the slides, I'm going to just give up. I'm joking. I might have another go at sharing my entire screen. So give us a moment. Is that better now? Hopefully you can see my screen, the full slide.
Not showing anything at the moment.
Just you.
Oh, let me try again.
That share button works.
Thank you. Oh, here it is. Share. It's asking me now. I see now. Yeah, thank you. Entire screen. That's better. Okay, I'm going to share my entire screen. Hopefully that works now. You can see my screen.
There it is.
Yep.
Beautiful.
Okay, it's the full screen as well. May
Yeah.
I just confirm? Okay, great. I'm going to run through these slides. So again, we have an agenda here. So as in, we have our topics of things we want to talk about. Stories are really, in my view, the missing piece. A little bit about me. I have been in tech for a long time. I mentioned about my digital versus mythology, and I also forgot to mention I like Guinness pie. So I have to be frank about that. And if there's no pie, I'll take the Guinness. This is the power of stories. So what I wanted to talk about here was, this was the slide I normally chatted to when I was talking about my brother working on the boats. The main thing about it was, since most of us can relate to stories and legends that we've heard in the past, and even I do ask you to reflect for just a moment, maybe when I was talking about my brother's situation, it stimulated something emotional in you, or you may have related to it. This is what it's all about. In my view, digital is not about systems anymore. It's about connecting people and enabling better outcomes for organizations and people using tech. This is what it really looks like. So I can relate. This is you with your architecture team and your leadership, your roadmaps, your frameworks, and you're ready to go, and look what happens. Suddenly you're in stormy seas. Why is that? We're seen as abstract, then sometimes we're seen as too technical. Architecture, you know, we're not always seen as part of the business. We're seen as a mysterious, mythical bunch of professionals over in the IT department who, you know, come up with them roadmaps and standards and principles, etc. And this is the way it's been for years and years. And I just reached a point where I said, the smartest people I've met and know work in tech. And time and time again, they just get frustrated. And I think that comes down to, personally for me, it's two things. The industry hasn't served us well. It's not brought us back to what architecture is really about and what digital strategy is all about, which is people change and enabling people change in organizations and for our customers. And the second thing is, if you talk to architects or people in your circle, we really do add a huge value. But that story is just never really told. And that's why I came up with this framework about how can we tell it better. So this is the framework that I've kind of came out of, as I say, 7 to 8 years of writing blogs. And you know what they say in the ancient myth, you know, it's when you're on your knees, you're about to give up, you feel your identity's lost. What's the point in being an architect? For the 25th time, I've heard that nobody understands what we're trying to do. So you kind of get a bit disillusioned. And at that point, I said, right, if there's nothing out there, I'm going to just create it myself and see how it goes. So this is the 3 pillars. I'm going to talk about these 3 pillars now. The first one is Shin. So Shin is a lovely Chinese word that represents the combination between the heart and the mind. And it's a kind of in Western word, we sort of refer to that as the gut. But in Chinese philosophy, which I'm a big fan of, Eastern philosophy, it's a beautiful concept. It's a little bit more than that. But the idea is that when you're telling a story and you're selling enterprise architecture or you're trying to get buy-in, you have to appeal to the first pillar, which are stakeholders. So the story's felt, not just heard. And that can come down to something as simple as replacing how we use certain words. Think of the stories that have stuck with you over the years. In many cases, you don't remember the details of those stories, the people you met. You remember 1 or 2 emotional feelings you got, or emotional things that resonated with you. And there's no reason why in digital we can't do that. We just haven't been given the tools to do it. Here's an example. On the left is conventional. This is the language you're going to hear used in every boardroom executive meeting. And this is why no wonder non-technical people get disengaged. I'm just trying to give you an example with the framework I've developed. We can make it more story aligned. And that's where you use Shin as a heart, mind type language. Now, I have some accreditations in the neuroscience of leadership also. And in that field, it's a big field. And they talk about appealing to the person's left brain versus right brain. There's nothing new here. But in my view, we don't have to invent anything new. We've been telling stories since millennia. We've just forgotten that we're able to do it. That's the first pillar. The second pillar is metaphor. Any good story thrives on metaphors. You heard me talking about dragons earlier. It helps turn boring hygiene artifacts into something that stimulates interest. Again, I've just developed some examples here. I'm sure you guys can come up with way more conventional statements than this in your experience. And yet, if we apply a bit of metaphorical exercise to it, we can tell it in a much more engaging way. Now, you don't have to do anything new here. My point is, you have your architects, your frameworks, you have your target states, you have all of the stuff you need. My point is, it's just a wee bit of reshaping. I'm not selling you a product here to say, use this and everything's going to be wonderful. This is just common sense in my view. Next one is Catalyst. This one I like, and it took me a while to come up with the name for this one, because I really wanted to capture that energy. And the third pillar in the digital mythology framework is catalyst. It's about getting that ignition, getting the buy-in. In other words, giving your stakeholders a part to play in the story. Because you wouldn't believe how helpful people will be and how much support you'll get when they realize that they are needed. And part of this overall transformation depends on them. Here's another example. Again, just to help articulate that with the right language and with the right approach to digital, we don't have to do any more digital stuff. We don't have to build any more tech. We just have to take it out of the world of frameworks, tools, technical narrative into the human interaction, the direct experience with the people we're dealing with. Here's some examples. So this is just some examples I've come up with over the years. I mean, to be fair, many of you would be well familiar with these, but you know, things like remediate technical debt, I don't know. Like if my mum doesn't know what that means, then I'm not going to say those words. I made that, you know, if you can't tell me, mum, in 30 seconds what rationalizing systems means, then you've lost her. And so you should. Because my mum, like business executives and non-tech people, shouldn't have to know tech. So this is the kind of benefit the framework brings that helps you go from what we're used to, what we've been taught, what TOGAF and TEEF and all these other frameworks teach us and tell us to use, and say, no, we've had enough of that. That's the technology that my brother was choosing to put into the boats. The business don't have to hear about that. I don't care if it's a Wilson Phillips or a Siemens compressor that kept the fishermen's air system warm. To me, I just need to understand what it's doing, why it's needed, and then you can ask me for money, and I will very likely invest. Now we're going to get on to the fun bit. So I'm a bit of a mythology fan, as you've probably guessed, but there are dragons in every transformation. And I'm just going to list here for you 3 of my favorite ones. So the one on the left, I think we all are familiar with that one. Okay, so where's the business? Where is even the business architecture? Where's the business strategy? Hang on, you've done what? They've gone out to market and bought their own ERP system. How did that happen? When I refer to dragons, I'm really just talking about obstacles here or challenges along your transformation journey. The other one, of course, is what is our role? How does EA differ from SA? How does a data architect integrate and work with an information analyst or a data BI? Now you have these data analytics and AI teams being stood up. How do they work with architecture? Where does architecture sit at the strategic planning table? Are we an order taker, etc.? And then my favorite one. Looks a bit dark, doesn't he? With those wild eyes. This is the one that I have just struggled with over the years, and I've been a practice lead in major organizations to set up governance. And when it comes to governance for governance sake, that's why people talk about architects living in their ivory towers, etc., etc. So these are just some examples of what challenges we face. And these are the things, these are the dragons we need to slay. We just need to find a way to work around them. With this framework, using Shin, metaphor, and catalyst, you can unlock the power of story. And that's where we slay the dragons. Some examples. Why do we need to be involved? I'm not even in IT, I'm busy. I think we've all heard that one before. Or like, you know, it's a sarcastic question at the bottom. Like really, like, do we really need enterprise architecture to help our business? And what you'll see here is examples of how to use the 3 pillars to slay that dragon. You can't slay it, you at least try to tame it. And it often means you'll see the language. There's no very little technical jargon. I use, by the way, I gave an executive presentation only a few weeks ago to the Department of Education. I was in a meeting with 12 executives and I used the blind men and the monk, the blind men and the elephant. as a beautiful metaphor to explain that you're trying to do too much all at once with your digital transformation program. And I explained that one part of the business think it's, I don't know if maybe just for benefit, maybe not everybody knows this one. So three monks were stood in front of a cave and they got blindfolded. And then they were asked to go into the cave and feel what's in the cave. And they were asked to guess and tell us what it is. Now we know what was in the cave was an elephant. And what happened was the monk at the front of the elephant, they felt the trunk and they said it's a snake. And the monk in the middle of the elephant said it's a wall or it's some kind of tent of some kind, some canvas. And the monk at the lower end felt the tree trunk, which was the leg. And then when they removed the blindfolds, they could see that none of those things were what they were dealing with. And that's a really nice metaphor to use. I've used it. I'd recommend, if you like it, use it. It's a great one. There's other ones like if transformation is going to take a long time, guess how long bamboo takes to nurture and culture in the soil? Almost 5 years. And it grows to full height within 9 months. So you have to be patient. Good things take time. Other examples, I like the bottom one there. I think this group would very much relate to that. And just get the vendor to do it, or we could just run it without needing an architecture. And again, what I'm trying to do here is just introduce this shift in mindset around. I would say I'm going to many organizations and they ask for a maturity assessment review to be done. I use different frameworks for doing that. They ask for capability uplift. And the first place I say is, what story are you telling your stakeholders? Nobody has an answer. They don't even know what I mean. Another example, again, some of these are from my own direct experience, but many of them are from what I've heard from peers. And I'm hoping some of these resonate with you. Again, dragons are dragons, but you either slay them or you work around them. That's the hero's journey. Did I mention I'm a big fan of The Hero's Journey by Joseph Campbell? Anyway, I have a whole podcast on that. Okay, so we're going to wrap up shortly. The 3 pillars. Shin is about finding that heart-mind connection. Change your language. Change the narrative. Take your services catalog. Reorganize it. Don't go out telling the business that we do governance to make sure architects are aligned to our principles. Don't even know what that means. That sounds boring. Turn it into something meaningful. In other words, we want sustainability. We want to avoid regret spend. We want to have connected systems. We want to have systems we can trust. We want to have engagement. We don't stop buying systems without thinking about how are they purpose-led. That's Shin. Metaphor, I mentioned some earlier. Have a go at using those. Catalyst, another one. This bit is quite important. You can even identify champions for what you're doing, but forget about all of that. So this is what IT has taught us in the industry, is you have to find your EAs, then you got to get your change managers, you got to have, no, I just don't agree with it. Anybody I've met in IT working at our level is very, very smart and very capable. So just give them the language to tell that story. It's about celebrating small wins, but it's also about getting the hook with your customers. That's it. Good news is you don't have to wait. You can make your architecture, your digital strategy, you really can make it a story to remember. I just came off a client in Melbourne and I went in, and in literally 6 weeks, we had a poster A0 up on the wall telling a story using these 3 pillars. Can I just maybe share something with you? If you really want to get buy-in with your stakeholders, go and invest in doing some nice, simple, metaphorical images and build up an infographic and just put it up on the wall. You wouldn't believe the storytelling that comes out of putting something up on the wall. We all love a good story, and this framework can help you build yours. Thank you for listening. There is a little more, so I'm going to just quickly, if I may, because I'm very passionate about this. I've just started a masterclass. It's online. and it's really exciting. I've got a lot of good feedback already. And the masterclass is really about taking this framework and going that bit further. So I asked people to bring along their dragons, and we worked through as a group to use Shin, Metaphor, and Catalyst to come back with working exercises. This, to me, is very real. And the reason it's real is because I've lived the myth of being the hero trying to go out there and slay the dragons. And it's just there's been nothing that we can grab a hold of to make sense of it. So that's why I put together this masterclass. I will also say, very excited to say, that I'm offering a 24-hour, 2 seats for 1. So if you have a colleague or even maybe somebody in the part of your transformation program or a peer that you think would enjoy this as well, then it's no problem. You sign up today. Within the next 24 hours, we will give them a seat as well. So it'll be myself, I'm the host, and then it's very exciting. So you'll see a bit more about that as well, that I'm talking to on LinkedIn, etc. But again, if you're interested in this, just use the code and sign up, and you can bring in one of your peers. That's it. That's from me. Thank you for listening.
Thank you, Declan. I really appreciate that. It's been, I know it's something that particularly Darryl and I have spoken about in the past, about the art of storytelling. And I think as we become consumers more and more in the digital landscape, the art of storytelling has been lost. You know, I think we want to consume rather than talk. So I'm happy to open up to any questions that anybody would have now. I know, David, you put your hand up, but I wasn't sure if that was a slip.
Oh, no, likely I was going to say something. Yeah, no, great. Thanks for sharing all that with us. And I guess I had a few different points. And the last one I just sort of landed on was that as enterprise architects, I guess, we were always sort of sitting there and going, geez, I wish they would do this. Here's the way to do this. Now AI is almost in our back pocket. Maybe we don't need these jokers anymore. That we can construct the solutions with the tools, demonstrating how we do integrate the systems across the organization. It just could be, maybe. Isn't AI, I talked to one guy, said, isn't AI just like a function call in programming language? I don't know. He didn't, a function call. Showing my age.
I used to write C++ template libraries, so yeah, it's my age as well. I really like that question, but I particularly like it because AI is modern mastery, right? And we have myth, which is what we are. I personally believe that we're going to go back to telling stories better. I think we have to, because what's going to happen is nobody's going to listen to us when we talk about using TOGAF, ADM, Phase G for governance, whatever. AI is going to have that sorted. It can do it better than us. There's no point in denying it. But what it can't do is build that relationship and that story narrative with people. It just can't do it. By the way, I use ChatGPT and AI a lot, and I've built a relationship with it. But no, seriously, it can be a bit. Have you had the hallucinations? Any of you guys had that yet? It's just creepy. Like, I've asked it to recite to me what I said 2 days ago, and it comes up with this wild stuff. I don't remember talking about that, and it's certain I did verbatim. But yeah, David, to your point there, look, I don't I get, like, I'm not an alarmist of any kind. Like, I just think evolution and progress is always going to be something we have to deal with. The only thing that I get concerned about is we're still going to courses on how to do TOGAF and stuff, and we're still going to courses on how to learn what the 4 domains of good architecture is. We're still learning about information versus data versus systems versus interfaces. What are we doing that for? Because that's not going to tell the story well. I see AI as a very powerful tool, and it can do things a lot faster with more integrity for us, but it's not going to necessarily do a better job. That's where we're going to have to repurpose what EAs do. That's what I really believe. Our EA's purpose is going to be to, before we used to have to get involved with How do you design a good system? Do you use distributed tier architecture? Would you use MFC, Microsoft Foundation classes? There's my, how would you do? Now it's like, no, we have a designer now. So we just say to them, so that now moves you into what's called black box architecture. So AI can build all the black boxes. We don't need to see inside it. The human role is bringing it all together to make sense from the story of, and again, this is not new. We have user stories. It's used in the industry, but my point is it's more the story behind that. And that's what I think EA's future is. I mean, it's fantastic what can happen now. There's so much innovation with AI, but the bit is, it's a bit scattered at the moment. So hope that answers your question, although I don't really think I did.
No, I think you're right. There's got to be hope, because in my career, at least, it's been EA and then, you know, a data architect, and I'm on a project and I'm helping them build it, and then I get out of it. And then and I'm back up here, and you're just always seem to be demonstrating how to do it. Well, shit, let's just do it.
That's right. Well said.
Superb. Declan, I've had a couple of questions coming directly to me. So just to put you on the spot, I'll throw a couple of those at you. How do you balance technical accuracy with emotional resonance in your storytelling?
Technical accuracy with emotional resonance?
Yeah.
That sounds like a person I'd like to have a pint with. Whoever asked that question.
I think everybody's going to put their hands up.
Thank you so much, Roger.
If there's a pint of Guinness in it, I'm there.
I can recommend it.
Or Kilkenny, actually.
Kilkenny. That was my university drink. Yeah, that's Kilkenny's pretty close, those two. Well, I guess this is the thing, you know, I think we've come from an industry where we have lots of data and we have lots of technical jargon, which is the technical accuracy bit. Because, you know, for you to describe something, as in what does a good architecture look like? What is a good strategy? You have to have technicality around it, right? So you have to have a way of demonstrating that it's a meaningful, future-proofed roadmap you have, right? So you're going hybrid cloud, or you're going with an integrated ESB type model, or you're going data-driven versus process-driven business rules or whatever. Balancing that with the emotional resonance, for me, the way I tend to do it is, and a good measure is, start the conversation with all of the technical stuff that you know, and then approach it like an artist approaches a sculpture, right? So a nice metaphor I use is, well, if you think of Picasso painting, if you paint a masterpiece, you add to the canvas and present the masterpiece. A sculpture does the opposite. They take bits away and presents the masterpiece underneath. Generally, my view here is start with your technical, get the accuracy there, and then try to take away from it. And as you take away from it, replace it with something that's metaphorically resonant with your audience. I will also say this, though. If you're selling something to a CFO versus to a COO, to a CEO versus to a head of customer design or whatever it is, you really have to tailor your emotional resonance to their vocabulary. So that's where it becomes a two-way thing. So start with the technical, but in terms, I mean, literally it becomes a mapping. So when you describe a technical capability, you basically have it mapped to a business capability, and you word it in the words of their language. And it's not very hard. You can just read their business strategy if they have one. You get 5 or 6 keywords out of it, even ask ChatGPT to help you. And that's their language, and map it back. I will say, though, that there are sometimes limits. You know, like, I mean, how far can you go explaining virtualization to a CFO or someone sitting in business? You just have to balance it with, you're sitting in a pub talking to somebody and you realize that you're talking about something, that conversation's going a bit dry and it's your round next. So you want to keep things going. So you kind of have to have that balance. So what that really comes down to, and I would just say this, I would just say ask and listen. Like, I know this is a cliche, listen. But how I would approach it is in a humble way. So you go to the stakeholders and you say, look, we know tech, okay, and we have a few ideas of how tech will work here, but those ideas would have a different impact on your business. can you tell us a bit more about your business and what impact would be greater than another? And they, if they're given a platform, they will talk to it, and then it's your job to map that back to the tech. I hope that answers the question. All right. It's a good question, though. Like that's pretty
so.
In there.
It's good. I actually had another one about show you metaphor, so I think that's pretty good. In your experience, Declan, what's the biggest barrier to using a narrative in enterprise architecture? Yeah, and how do you overcome that?
The fact that it's called architecture should never have been called architecture. Terrible.
I think we'll all agree with that.
What would you have called it?
Sorry.
Declan? What would you have called it?
Oh, I would have had the word alignment in there for sure. I would call it digital alignment or enablement, but definitely not architect. It's not architect. We don't architect.
I mean, I think architecture came from back in the day when we were programming in C++ and COBOL and Fortran and the rest.
Yeah.
Project management as a discipline came from construction. And so the metaphor was building a building. And so solution architecture was building being an architect for a building, and enterprise architecture was kind of like being a town planner, sort of doing architecture for a town. And that metaphor, even though we've moved a long way from waterfall project management and we've moved to agile and everything else, that house metaphor, I see it so often in IT systems. It's like you're building a house and you need plumbing and you need electricity and you need functions for the rooms. And it's like, that's such an old metaphor, right? Like we need to move on.
It is.
Maybe we are actually designing a spaceship and we need navigation and we need, visibility and we need propulsion, right? And that's a totally different metaphor. And suddenly we wouldn't be architects. We would be, I don't know, designers or engineers.
No, I think we're, well, let's be frank about it. To be fair, if you're doing proper EA, you're visionaries. That's it. You have to come up with the next 5 to 10 year plan. And I actually
digital interaction is different today than it was 20 years ago, though, right? Because we were still building the fundamentals of the systems themselves. Now we seem to be able to just link another system together. Boom, we're off and running. So I like the idea of navigating, though, right? Where do I go to find it?
Well, you know what? Can I just be? If I was to take a mythical angle on it, I think our role is to guide. And I think we can guide. So in other words, the business are going to get their own systems. They do it all the time. AI is producing SaaS products now. We're not going to keep up with deciding whether you should use that SaaS product or this SaaS product. The business are used to instant gratification. I didn't work in Solvency II, which is heavily regulated industry. And I've seen small insurance companies buy SaaS products, 150 grand a month, signed up, done, and they're using it within 3 days. You try being an architect in that organization, you're not going to be an architect, right? And so what I mean by guide is, it's kind of like that role of saying, look, there are just, sorry, can I just add to this as well? I brought into organizations this concept of stop doing your architecture roadmap, stop doing your systems roadmap, give me a decision roadmap. Show me it. You start with the decision roadmap. You're doing what my brother did on the boats. So what's your decision? Decision is to replace our SAP with, no, that's not a decision. What's the decision? Decision is to move off legacy ERP onto something new. That's a decision. There are 5 things you can do there, as we know, 5 different ways to do it. Doesn't matter. My point is, that's not where the goal is. The goal is, in the next 5 to 8 years, we're replacing our ERP. We're bringing in a new AI bot to do this. We're enhancing our new call center. We're setting up a new data center. We're going to cloud. We are doing competing decisions. This is where the guide sits in, like the elder, and says, guys, try not to do 7 massively strategic things at the same time. My point here is whether they choose some or Microsoft, or it's becoming less important. My point here is, it's why are we replacing our ERP at the same time as we're replacing our finance, reporting, our regulatory systems. That's what I mean. That's why I don't like the word architect, because that's not what an architect does. if you think about it, it's more like the planner, the guide. And it is a really nice topic though as well, because I was in a council here, and I introduced a metaphor for them. I introduced the village, the shamanic village, and I introduced the shaman as the strategy guy, and they go up into the hills and eat all those herbs and talk to the ancestors and come up with where we need to be in 5 to 10 years time. That's your strategy. But they will always come up with different things. It's a bit loose, that's the long-term view. The architect sits in the middle from on the operation grounds. How do we get to where we need to be? So yeah, I don't know if that answers the question clearly, but obviously there's a lot of I just don't think it's been fair on ourselves. I lobbied for changing our role description with the ACS Sophia framework. I'm not sure if you guys know what that is. Sophia, it's a framework for roles. Get the word architect out. We're not architects. I mean, but you could look Ten and Togaf and all these guys to change the word architect. We are, and then if you want to go even further, we really, our real role where we add value is storytelling. That's really what we're here to do. Tell stories and exercise caution on certain decisions. The business make the decisions anyway. So you just got to say, look, if you're going to go down that path, you might want to invest in your data integration layer, because by the time you have that in and a 4 years time that in, I'm working with a council who are doing that and getting ready for the Olympics. It's like, this is a council that are, 30,000 people, and now they're going to have an Olympic stadium. You imagine the shift in mindset. Anyway, hope that helps.
Absolutely. I think it's got time for one last question. Ravinder, you've put your hand up.
Yes, I am. And thanks, Declan. That was a wonderful presentation. I have one question, and that is regarding. So right now we were discussing how this mythology we can create this storytelling for C-suite. But if we have to craft stories for different levels, like cross-functional teams, engineers, and designers, to see. So that they can see the dragon and the treasures in their own language. So how to do that?
Yeah, and you know what, this is where you need partners on your journey, right?
Yeah.
So in some operating models, they have this idea of business partners. So people in IT who are kind of working within the business, like embedded BAs, that kind of concept, who understand the business well. In other operating models, you have, if you're it's rare, enterprise architecture itself sits over in the business in somewhere like excellence or transformation, whatever. But you can't sell the story to everybody in the same way. What you can do is you can have some fundamental metaphors that work, and a hook that works. For everyone, but that's just to open the door and get in front of them. And then when you're in front of the finance team, for example, you will change your language, because often someone in risk, say, for them, all they care about is primarily contingency and mitigation. So how do you tell the story of rolling out a new system? They're terrified of change. So you have a little bit of a different narrative there to say someone who's over in business strategy or trying to, go after the next market segment. They would welcome change because they need it, because that's the enabler of their function. I think my recommendation there, though, is put together, and I do this in the masterclass, put together a stakeholder matrix. And then what I say is, of your key stakeholders, call out the dragons.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and label it. And then say, we're going to take one dragon on for this stakeholder, whatever that is. And then you put the Shin metaphor and catalyst around it. What I'd also say as well is, when you're using metaphors, try not to use a metaphor too close to the ground of the person's profession. So what I mean by that is, if you're talking to a finance person about systems or digital transformation, try not to compare it to what a bank does, or people will intuitively think that if I'm talking to a finance person, I'm going to compare, security of bullion banks compared to cash flow deposits. But you see, I don't know finance. So if you try to use a metaphor close to their ground of being, they're going to be just frustrated because you don't know it. So what I suggest there is that it's like an orthogonal approach. If you're going to build a relationship with someone who's a finance person, talk about metaphors that are not at all related to finance. And then similarly, if you're talking to an operational delivery type PMO person, try not to talk about on the ground changes, try to talk about something not close to their ground. Because if you do that, it completely opens up this storytelling ability, because nobody likes to be told anything about their own business. They're experts. What do you know? And if you try to even say, hey, I think this system could help you guys do this better, you lost them. What do you know about their business?
Yep. Got it.
So that's hopefully helpful. So it's kind of like dragons, but you have a special, as in you have an intended approach to tell the story in a way that isn't in their domain, if that makes sense, but you get the same outcome. Hope that helps. Yeah.
Yeah, thanks.
Great. Thanks for the questions. And look, thanks for your attention, everybody. I've just really enjoyed sharing. As you can imagine, I could talk about this all day, and if there was a Guinness and a Kilkenny, it'd be all night as well.
Appreciate it, Declan. It's been really interesting hearing your story, and I think probably like to put you on the spot again. I think it'd be a bit of interest to hear another rendition, maybe in a few months' time. So if anyone's interested in that, we'll have a conversation around that point. I'll share the slides and the recording. I'll do a blog later on, and I'll send that to you all on Meetup. Just to give you a bit of rundown, we've got two in the next couple of months. So we've got a late lunch, probably between lunch and dinner time. It's not quite, I don't know what you call it, it's not brunch, but it's definitely a late lunch. So we've got Julio Graham from the UK. So he's going to be dialing in from, well, I'd say London, but he's actually in Essex. And he's going to be talking around designing for the unknown, a system-based approach to strategic readiness. Again, another great thought leader. Matthew George introduced him to me, and he's been a great person to have a conversation with. So another one I'm really excited with. And then in July, we've got David and Daryl, Data Double, come back. So we haven't picked a subject for that one yet, but I don't think David and Daryl really need a subject as long as we just start talking about the data it goes. So if anyone has not been to one of their comedy acts, the best way I can describe it, it's a really good hour of just chatting and David going off on weird tangents. But it's a fun guide. So I just want to thank you all very much for joining us, for giving up your lunchtime, joining us for us now. Declan, really thank you for your time. I really appreciate that. If anybody's got any questions or would like to give us a review, I really appreciate that as well. And look forward to seeing you all next month. Thanks again for your time.
Thanks, everybody.
Bye, everybody.
Thanks, guys.
Good luck with all that storytelling.
Cheers. Thanks, guys.
Thanks. Hey, Andrew, could you stay on and just have a quick chat?
Sure. I'll give you a call, Lars.
Okay. Yep. Cool.